Okay guys, I thought I'd just do a quick video on what I think is the harder language, Latin or Greek. Because I think a lot of people might see Greek and see its different writing system and infer that it must be harder than Latin, especially considering all the vocabulary we have in common with Latin. But I just want to examine whether that's actually true. So I'm going to look at some of the ways Greek is easy. I think it's easier than Latin actually, and then some of the possible ways in which Greek is much harder than Latin. And then we'll see where we are. So the thing about Greek that I think is quite interesting is that for an ancient language, it's actually incredibly similar to English. Just the whole sort of cadence and flavour of Greek, it's much more comfortable for an English speaker to learn. The big hallmark of this is the fact that it has a first definite pronoun. So one of the things that throw people off about Latin is there is no definite pronoun. So in English we would say the dog, and in Greek you would say ho, which means the, and then kuon, which is dog. But in Latin you don't have that, you just say canis, and that means both the dog, a dog. And you might say, well, surely that makes Latin even easier. It doesn't have a first person definite article. But the thing one will find from studying Greek is that with the definite article, you feel much more at home than you do in Latin. So there's that. Then I would say sentence structure. It's remarkably, if you're used to studying strange languages that are quite different to your own, or different to English, I would say, and you've never studied ancient Greek, then you'll be quite amazed at just how easy it is to understand the cadence of a sentence. So one of the things that's interesting about Latin is it generally puts the verb at the end of the sentence, which we don't do in English, obviously. So for example, if I say I sit in the garden, in Latin the natural word order would be something more like I in the garden sit. All these kind of Cambridge Hagen course things where it says Caecilius sedat in horso, it's actually more like Caecilius in horso sedat. But anyway, that's a bit off topic. As I was saying, but Greek, on the other hand, doesn't like this. The word order is more flexible than it is in English by merit of the case system, which we'll come to as well. But by and large, it's much easier to get to grips with the sentence structure of Greek, because they're much more comfortable with putting the words after the subjects rather than at the end of the sentence. So those are the things that I think make Greek rather easy to learn. And I'm going to talk about things that make Greek appear more difficult. So the obvious one, which I've already kind of hinted at, is the alphabet. So the alphabet in Greek, I mean with any language, an alphabet makes it look far more difficult to get into. It makes a much wider gap already. The funny thing about the Greek alphabet though is it really is remarkably similar to the Latin alphabet, and it doesn't look like it if you don't know the language, if you can't read the alphabet. But very quickly, it's just so, apart from a few letters, it's very similar. And learning alphabet, and you think it's going to be really hard. Actually, no, it isn't. Probably one of the easiest things to learn of a language. So I'll say alphabet, okay, yeah, that's one thing. That's one sort of bridge, but it's a lot smaller than people actually think. And then, secondly, verbs. So verbs in Greek, very complicated. So in Greek, in Latin, you have 3 moods. You've got the imperative, the subjunctive, and the indicative. Now, what does that mean? Well, in English, we don't really have moods of verbs in the same way. So, but it's just about the sense in which the verb's used. So, I walk to most verbs are just in the indicative mood. So, I go to the shops. You're just saying, if you're saying what something happens, as something happens, then it's in the indicative. If you're commanding someone to do something, like go to the shops, then it's in the imperative mood. And again, in English, we don't conjugate this, it's just kind of inferred, but in Latin you do. And then there's the subjunctive, which is for things that aren't, if you're not talking about things that are actually happening. So, I wish that he would go to the shops. He would go. It's like you're not really talking about it actually happening. I wish is in the indicative, but he would go is in the subjunctive. And it's quite complicated how it works in English, but basically, not unless you really need to know. But what we need to know is, in Latin, the most time compared to Greek, it's very simple. You have 3 moods of verb. In Greek, however, you have indicative, dicative, subjunctive, and optative. And optative and subjunctive are really, there's a really weird difference between them. And then you've got the indicative and the imperative. And imperative, you have different tenses for that as well. So that's another thing that makes Greek look a lot more intimidating, is the way they conceptualise mood is more difficult. However, I think that kind of grammatical approach, you can get by without really needing to know that. I think that's a detail that doesn't require your attention if your focus is comprehension. So, in conclusion, in some ways Greek is harder than Latin, but overall I would say the harder language is Latin, because Greek is a little bit more accessible, a little bit more familiar to an English speaker.